The intel dropped at 3:47 a.m. 9 minutes later, forces were airborne. 17 minutes after that, insurgents who thought they had hours were already surrounded. No bases, no occupation, just surgical speed that's rewriting African warfare. Ibrahim Traoré isn't fighting the war everyone else is fighting. He's collapsing time itself as a weapon, and what you're about to see will change everything you thought you knew about the Sahel. The call came in at 3:47. No warning, no debate, just coordinates and a window that wouldn't stay open long. Within 9 minutes, Burkina forces were airborne. 17 minutes later, insurgents who thought they had another hour to relocate were surrounded, disarmed, and detained before the sun cracked the Sahel horizon. This wasn't luck. This was the new doctrine. And Ibrahim Traoré just rewrote the rules of African warfare. For decades, the playbook was predictable. Occupy territory, build bases, hold ground, wait for the enemy to come to you. It was slow, expensive, and gave insurgents exactly what they needed most: time. Time to regroup, time to recruit, time to vanish into the brush and return when the soldiers left. But under Traoré, Burkina Faso's AES security forces stopped playing that game entirely. They didn't come to hold land. They came to collapse the clock. This is what no one expected. The shift isn't about more troops or bigger budgets. It's about speed as doctrine. It's about turning minutes into weapons. In Traoré's Burkina Faso, the battlefield isn't a map, it's a timeline. And the side that acts first doesn't just win the fight. They decide whether the fight happens at all. Real-time intelligence is the engine. Drones, local informants, intercepts, pattern recognition, all feeding into command centers where decisions that used to take hours now take seconds. When intel drops, there's no committee, no bureaucratic ladder, just immediate action. Forces move before insurgents finish their meetings. Strikes land before convoy routes are finalized. The enemy plans in hours. Traoré's forces respond in minutes. That gap is lethal. It's a complete inversion of traditional counterinsurgency. Geography used to be everything: who controlled which village, which road, which district. But Traoré's forces don't camp in villages waiting for attacks. They don't patrol roads hoping to catch movement. They show up exactly when and where insurgents think they're safe, because they know where the enemy is before the enemy knows they've been seen. Control isn't about presence anymore. It's about appearing instantly, anywhere, the moment it matters. This wasn't just a tactical tweak, it was a philosophical break. Insurgencies thrive on patience. They wait out occupations. They fade when pressure comes and return when it lifts. But you can't wait out an opponent who doesn't occupy. You can't fade from a force that strikes before you move. Traoré didn't try to outweight the insurgents. He outsped them. And in doing so, he turned their greatest advantage, mobility and elusiveness, into a vulnerability. Is this sustainable, or is it burning too bright too fast? Drop your take, because what's happening next will show whether speed alone can break an insurgency, or whether something else is required. The implications stretch far beyond Burkina Faso. Across the Sahel, governments have spent billions on bases, checkpoints, and occupation strategies with little to show for it. Traoré's model offers an alternative. Don't try to be everywhere. Be exactly where it counts, exactly when it counts. It's leaner, it's faster. And if it works, it could redefine how African states fight asymmetric wars in the 21st century. But speed demands precision. One bad intercept, one wrong coordinate, 1 minute of hesitation, and the advantage evaporates. The doctrine depends on flawless intelligence and flawless execution, every time. There's no margin for error when your entire strategy is built on being faster than the enemy's reaction time. It's high-risk, high-reward warfare, and Traoré is betting Burkina Faso's security on it. He came for sovereignty. He stayed for transformation. And now, he's proving that in modern African conflict, time isn't just money, it's survival. The insurgents are still trying to hold ground. Traoré's forces are controlling the one thing that can't be reclaimed once it's lost: the next 60 seconds. This wasn't just a speech. This wasn't just reform. This was a complete rethinking of what power looks like when you stop fighting wars the old way. He's built different, and the world just found out why. They weren't hunting soldiers. They were hunting the machine. And on a dust-choked Thursday in northern Burkina Faso, that machine stopped running. No firefight, no siege, just a 10-minute operation that severed a fuel line insurgents had relied on for months. By sunrise, 3 cells were immobilized. By noon, their communication network was dark. By evening, the fear they'd used to control 2 villages had evaporated. This wasn't war as usual. This was surgical dismantling. And Ibrahim Traoré's AES forces just proved that killing the system is deadlier than chasing the men. For years, counterinsurgency meant one thing: find the fighters, engage, repeat. Body counts became the metric. Patrols became rituals. And insurgencies adapted because they understood something most militaries didn't. You don't need to win battles if you control the machinery that sustains the fight. Fuel keeps trucks moving. Money keeps recruits coming. Communication keeps cells coordinated. Intimidation keeps civilians silent. Break those, and the insurgency doesn't just lose ground, it loses function. Traoré's forces didn't come to fight. They came to break. The shift is profound. Autonomous units, small, fast, precise, operate on intelligence that updates in real time. A drone spots a convoy refueling in a dry riverbed. Within minutes, the route is cut. No prolonged engagement, no occupation, just a strike that removes a capability and moves on. Another team intercepts a financial courier. The cash never reaches its destination. Recruitment stalls. Operations delay. The insurgency doesn't collapse in one dramatic clash. It erodes one severed artery at a time. Is this the future of African conflict or just a temporary advantage? Drop your take, because what's unfolding is rewriting decades of military thinking. Traditional strategies assumed you had to control space to deny insurgents freedom of movement. Traoré's model inverts that logic. You don't need to be everywhere if you can disrupt everything. Fuel depots become targets. Supply caches become vulnerabilities. The routes insurgents use to move weapons, money, and messages become kill zones, not for people, but for the infrastructure of violence itself. It's not about inflating body counts. It's about collapsing capacity. The insurgents feel it differently than they've felt any campaign before. There's no front line to probe, no base to avoid, no pattern to exploit. They plan an operation, and the fuel doesn't arrive. They call for reinforcements, and the message doesn't go through. They try to intimidate a village, and the operatives who enforce that fear vanish overnight. Not killed in a pitched battle, but quietly removed in operations, so brief the broader network doesn't even register the loss until it's too late. The fear that kept communities compliant starts to crack, because the system enforcing it no longer feels inevitable. This is what precision looks like when it's deployed at scale. Drones don't just surveil. They identify nodes, the points where supply, communication, and control intersect. Local intelligence confirms what satellites suggest. And when the strike comes, it's not designed to announce itself. It's designed to remove a capability so cleanly that by the time insurgents realize what's gone, 3 other nodes are already targeted. The tempo is relentless, but the presence is minimal. Forces move in, dismantle, and withdraw before the enemy can mass a response. Can you sustain a revolution by breaking things faster than your enemy can rebuild them? Comment below, because the answer will define the next phase of this conflict. The implications cut deeper than tactics. For decades, African governments were told that defeating insurgencies required massive troop deployments, expensive infrastructure, and long-term occupation. Traoré is proving there's another path. Don't occupy. Don't patrol endlessly. Don't chase ghosts through the bush. Instead, identify what the insurgency needs to function and eliminate it faster than they can adapt. It's leaner. It's cheaper. And it doesn't require foreign advisors or permanent bases. It requires intelligence, speed, and the willingness to fight a different kind of war. This wasn't just a tactical update. This was a doctrinal revolution. Insurgents built their model on patience, adaptability, and the assumption that governments would exhaust themselves trying to hold territory. Traoré's forces aren't trying to hold anything. They're trying to dismantle everything the insurgency depends on to survive. And in doing so, they've turned the asymmetry of guerrilla warfare into a vulnerability. The insurgents are still fighting the last war. Burkina Faso is already fighting the next one. He came for sovereignty. He stayed for precision. And now, he's showing the continent what happens when you stop hunting fighters and start killing the machine that makes them dangerous. This wasn't just strategy, it was evolution. And the world is watching. The market reopened on Tuesday. Not in 6 months. Not after peace talks or ceasefires or lengthy negotiations. On Tuesday, 3 days after AES forces moved through, dismantled an insurgent checkpoint in under 20 minutes, and left before most villagers even realized soldiers had been there. By Wednesday morning, traders were back on the roads. By Thursday, children were walking to school without parents scanning the treeline. This wasn't liberation through occupation. This was something the Sahel hadn't seen in years. Security that didn't feel like a new form of captivity. And under Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso is proving that the fastest way to restore civilian life is to refuse to disrupt it in the first place. For too long, the equation was broken. Security meant soldiers. Soldiers meant bases. Bases meant checkpoints, curfews, restricted movement, and the slow suffocation of normal life. Communities were told they were being protected, but what they felt was control. Markets stayed closed because military convoys blocked roads. Schools emptied because parents feared crossfire. Daily routines collapsed under the weight of permanent deployment. The insurgents terrorized. The military occupied. And civilians were trapped between two forces that both claimed to be fighting for them. Traoré looked at that cycle and saw it for what it was, a failure dressed up as strategy. So he flipped it. Instead of planting troops in villages for months, AES forces strike fast and leave faster. No bases, no prolonged presence, no transformation of civilian spaces into military zones. A cell tries to intimidate a community, forces move in, neutralize the threat in minutes, and withdraw before the sun sets. The operation is over before it becomes an occupation. And that difference, that refusal to linger, changes everything. Is this sustainable? Or will the insurgents just return the moment forces leave? Drop your take, because what's happening in these villages will determine whether this doctrine holds. Civilians feel the shift immediately. Roads that were too dangerous to travel last week are open this week. Not because soldiers are stationed every 100 meters, but because the threat that closed them was removed cleanly and precisely. Markets that shut down under insurgent intimidation are trading again, not because a base was built nearby, but because the fear was severed at its root and life was allowed to resume. There's no checkpoint demanding papers. No armored vehicle idling in the town square. Just the quiet return of normalcy. And that's what confidence looks like when it's rebuilt from the ground up. The doctrine isn't just about speed. It's about minimizing collateral disruption. Long deployments don't just cost money and manpower. They cost trust. Everyday soldiers occupy a village. The line between protector and enforcer blurs. Restrictions pile up. Freedoms shrink. And eventually, the presence meant to provide security starts to feel like another form of control. Traoré's forces avoid the trap entirely by refusing to overstay. They come when needed. They act decisively. And they leave before the community has to adjust its entire existence around them. This is the part no one talks about when they debate counterinsurgency tactics, the psychological toll of prolonged military presence on the very people being defended. Traoré understood that security isn't just about removing threats. It's about allowing life to continue. And life doesn't continue when your village becomes a garrison. It continues when the threat is gone and the soldiers are too. Can you win a war without occupying the ground you're trying to protect? Comment below. Because this strategy is challenging everything we thought we knew about stabilization. The results are starting to show. Communities that were paralyzed by fear 6 months ago are functioning again. Not perfectly, not without risk, but functioning. And that momentum, the ability to go to market, to send kids to school, to move freely without calculating whether today is the day violence returns. That's the foundation of resilience. Insurgencies thrive when they can make daily life impossible. Traoré's doctrine makes it possible again, and does so without imposing a new set of restrictions in the name of safety. This wasn't just a security strategy. This was a recognition that military success means nothing if civilians can't live in the spaces you're claiming to secure. The insurgents wanted to control through fear. Traditional forces wanted to control through presence. Traoré chose a third option: deliver security so efficiently that control becomes unnecessary. He came for sovereignty. He stayed for precision. And now, he's proving that the best way to protect a community is to let it breathe. This wasn't just doctrine. This was dignity. And in the Sahel, that might be the most revolutionary weapon of all. They didn't ask for permission. They didn't wait for consensus. And on a sweltering afternoon in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim Traoré's government made it official. Burkina Faso would no longer structure its security around foreign frameworks, regional approval, or the slow-moving machinery of traditional intervention. The AES doctrine wasn't just operational. It was political. And in one calculated move, Traoré didn't just challenge insurgents. He challenged decades of Western and regional dominance in the Sahel. This wasn't just a new strategy. It was a declaration that Africa could secure itself faster, cheaper, and without waiting for Paris, Washington, or Abuja to sign off. He's built different. And the implications are shaking every capital that thought they controlled the script. For years, the playbook was written elsewhere. French troops stationed across the region. American advisors embedded in command structures. ECOWAS summits debating interventions that took months to deploy and years to show results. The assumption was clear: African states couldn't handle complex security threats alone. They needed external support, regional coordination, and patient, methodical stabilization efforts that prioritized process over speed. Traoré looked at that assumption and torched it. His forces aren't waiting for approval. They're not coordinating through multilateral channels. They're acting, succeeding, and doing it without the structures that were supposed to be indispensable. That success is the disruption. Because if Burkina Faso can deliver security faster and cheaper through local autonomy, speed, and real-time judgment, then what exactly were decades of foreign intervention achieving? The question isn't just tactical. It's existential for the powers that built their Sahel presence on the idea that African states couldn't do this alone. And now, one of the poorest countries in the region is proving that maybe they can, and maybe they've been held back by the very systems claiming to help them. Is this the beginning of a new African security paradigm, or a risky gamble that will collapse under its own weight? Drop your take, because the stakes just went continental. Western and regional powers are watching closely, and not just with admiration. France's military footprint in the Sahel has been shrinking for years, pushed out by governments tired of deployments that stabilized little and cost much. The United States has poured resources into training programs and intelligence sharing, with mixed results at best. ECOWAS has debated intervention after intervention, often moving too slowly to matter. Traoré's model threatens all of them, because it suggests their methods weren't just inefficient, they were structurally flawed. If speed and autonomy work better than consultation and coordination, then the entire architecture of Sahel security is up for debate. But the risks are real, and they're mounting. The AES doctrine depends on one thing above all else: intelligence accuracy. Every strike, every disruption, every 10-minute operation assumes the intel is correct. One bad tip, one misidentified target, one civilian casualty from a rushed decision, and the trust that makes this model work evaporates. Speed is a weapon, but it's also a vulnerability. There's no time for second-guessing, no lengthy verification process, no committee to catch mistakes before they happen. The system runs on judgment made in seconds, and judgment can fail. Civilian trust is another pressure point. Right now, communities see operations that remove threats without imposing occupation. But trust is fragile. If strikes start feeling arbitrary, if communities begin to fear the speed as much as they once feared the insurgents, the entire foundation cracks. The doctrine only works if civilians believe it's protecting them without controlling them. Lose that belief, and the difference between this approach and the old one collapses. Then there's operational exhaustion. High-tempo operations sound dynamic, but they demand relentless energy, flawless logistics, and personnel who can maintain precision under constant pressure. Can Burkina Faso sustain that pace for years? Can forces keep moving, striking, adapting without burning out or cutting corners? The model is proving itself in months. The question is whether it holds over years. Can speed replace structure? Or does every revolution eventually need stabilization? Comment below, because what happens next will determine whether this is a breakthrough or a warning. Traoré came for sovereignty. He stayed for disruption. And now, he's forcing the entire region to reconsider what security looks like when it's designed by Africans, for Africans, without waiting for external validation. The West is nervous. ECOWAS is recalibrating. And insurgents are scrambling. But the doctrine's success isn't guaranteed. It's being tested in real time, with real lives and real consequences. If it works, it rewrites the rules. If it fails, it becomes a cautionary tale about the dangers of moving too fast without the systems to catch what speed misses. This wasn't just strategy. This was a bet on autonomy, speed, and the belief that Africa doesn't need permission to protect itself. The world is watching, and the clock is ticking.